Hey there, my friends. How's it going? I'm sitting in a dark room, obviously. My lighting is not sufficient or adequate for my presentation, but then actually, now that I think about it, I realize that my light is absolutely perfect for this presentation because I'm going to be talking a little bit about nihilism. And it's funny because I actually planned on doing this uh, a while back, but then my brother and my mom and I were talking today, and somehow discussion came up. I sent him a clip of a meme that I saw, which had a picture of some old Greek, philosopher-looking guy. I don't even know who it was, and it said, "What was it?" Oh, see, I can't even remember, but it was Mediocrities was the name of him. And he said, I think his quote was like, I guess so, or it's so so, or something like that. And it was just so, on that par with what a person might associate with nihilism. But my reason for making this is to kind of clarify what nihilism isn't, not what it is. And, but not to address the particular philosophy itself. Like Schopenhauer was the one who revealed to Nietzsche that he was basically a nihilist, and then Nietzsche worked and expounded on the philosophy. And I think where a lot of people get lost is when they stop the lessons at nothing matters, right? Because you hear about it. I didn't learn about nihilism till I was older, but I know a lot of people learn it in college, and they'll read the work of Nietzsche or others, and they'll just kind of paraphrase it all and say, oh, okay, well, this person basically thought that nothing mattered. Do you really think that a person who thought nothing mattered would write that many books or be that publicly present? And that's the thing, the kind of uh, if you look at the big picture, you realize that a lot of these philosophies are just misunderstood. Nihilism could be viewed as pessimism, but it's not at all. In fact, nihilism is basically the direct opposite of pessimism on that end of the scale because it's hiding from despair rather than focusing on it. Now, you might think that hiding from something is a bad thing, but when you're hiding from despair, it's not. And some people may say, well, that's just willful ignorance, or, that's just trying to see the glass half full even when things are bad. And I would say, yes, and yes, exactly, and exactly. There's nobody on earth who can convince me that seeing things in a negative light is going to benefit me. Now, I understand that there's some benefit in having anxiety or stress or making mistakes and then growing from it, but that's different from focusing on the negativity. There are people out there who point the finger at everyone else as the problem. Look at these people doing this, and look at how these people are doing this, and oh, we're being oppressed in this way and that way and that way. And all of this may be true. Yeah, there are shadow groups and organizations and companies trying to profit off of us, and a lot of bullshit in the media. All of this is true. But is it important? And if so, how important is it to our personal lives? If you look back and ask yourself, what was a major media story that if I wasn't there for it, I would have been misinformed and it could have actually harmed me or affected me? Now, really try to think of the last thing. If you were to look at just the headlines once a month, is there anything you would have missed that would have really harmed you in your life? No. Because we are rubberneckers. We are obsessed with watching the media and what's going on in the world. And since people today are so embarrassed about that, they go to what they call alternative media. And, these are just other guys who are reciting the same media bullshit and putting their own spin on it. But often, a lot of people who focus on the negative in this realm could be viewed as nihilists, but they're really not. A nihilist would never post a video trying to prove that what they believe is true, or that they have the one answer to everybody's problems, or that they know the truth and everybody else is wrong. It's not something that even crosses the mind because it's not important. It's not relevant. Being a nihilist means, in a way, that you see the world as a repeating pattern, and I can't define it as well as this paper that I came across. And I wanted to read it to you all because I thought it would really put it in perspective. Now, this is paraphrased. I actually removed a lot of the context that was... It was a conversation between a person and somebody was talking about this other philosopher and viewpoints that weren't really relevant to it, and it's pretty short, so I'll just read it. And it's nihilism versus Stoicism, because apparently Nietzsche hated Stoicism, and anybody who's been a subscriber of mine knows that I've talked about Stoicism in the past. Now, I don't think of them as mutually exclusive, and I think it's really silly when any philosopher thinks that, well, this is a good philosophy and that's a bad philosophy. It's okay to look at them differently, but to judge an entire philosophy as good or bad, you can't do if you're a nihilist, for example. You don't judge good or bad, and this is why. I'll read this part. I wish I could recall where I got this from, and I don't have my glasses, so I'm going to have to read it in the light here. It says, "It is all well and good for St. Piglucci," which is a person obviously in the discussion. "It is all well and good for Sir Piglucci to sit and meditate on the goodness of man. And if that notion gets him through the day, all well and good. Nihilism, however, is more realistic and far less time-consuming. Once you make up your mind that human nature will never change, that it necessarily drives all human enterprise, and that every human social unit has been configured to accommodate it, you are home free." The next part says, "Shit happens. Indeed it does. But the trick is to be prepared. Reinhold Niebuhr penned the Serenity Prayer because as a philosopher, he knew what was coming. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." And on a side note, anyone in AA knows the Serenity Prayer. The Grand Inquisitor in the Brothers Karamazov challenges the returned Christ and says that he has sold the world a bill of goods. "Man doesn't want free will," the Inquisitor says. "He wants bread and relief from suffering, both of which you could have given, but didn't. He doesn't care about morality, right behavior, or spiritual evolution. He wants to eat. A good nihilist doesn't bother with parsing moral conundrums, or rather passing judgments. We are all propelled by the random events of the past, by generic and universal human nature, and by the particular configurations of that nature which gives us our individual character and personality. Morality, like God, is a human construct. There is no such thing as an absolute, universal, moral good, and if there is, it has been devised by man as a social governor." Having said all this, nihilism is the easiest philosophy to espouse. You simply have to have lived long enough to see the predictable repetition of human events and understood the timelessness of them to arrive at this conclusion. No meditation, no yoga, no dispreferred indifferent. Just eyes wide open with a little rational analysis, and time and tide will do the rest. And I thought that was so well put and so quaint. The idea that you're just letting things flow in a way that this really does resound, even though it seems to conflict with Stoicism, with Buddhism. It actually connects much closer to Hinduism than anything else. Hinduism is a very dark religion, and the way that people bury their dead at the Ganges and burn them in funeral pyres right down there by the river, a lot of people find that disgusting. They want to be disconnected from that because it's something that they've already judged as being bad or gross or undesirable. And one of the hardest things for us as humans to do is to overcome our judgment of what things are good and bad. Now look, on a side note, I need to make it clear that the point of this video isn't to say nothing matters. On the contrary, it's to say that there are certain agreed upon human values. This goes much further and much deeper than I can cover here. It's not the same as cynicism. It's not about hating reality or ignoring what is real. or the certain human values that we do share. Just because we realize that human values are often manufactured doesn't mean that we have to ignore them, because there obviously is a shared humanity and something that we want to share with one another, right? We want to be treated with respect. We want to be loved. We like it when we're complimented or when people are kind to us, and we want to be kind to others. But for some reason, we become resistant to others because maybe we live in a situation where we don't get that same mutual respect, and it gets us angry and we become cynical. Nihilism is about letting go of all that and just not passing judgment, even on whether it's a situation or politics, or religion, or a person, an individual, a friend, a stranger, a family member, somebody who maybe you don't get along with, or maybe sometimes you do. People are unique and different, and being able to understand that each person's values are unique, nihilism allows us to see that just because we believe something to be true doesn't mean we can ever look down on other people for not believing that's true. And I think that's really coming to light. It's becoming basic philosophy, a basic tenet of philosophy for a lot of people these days, but they're approaching it in the wrong way because they're still looking at a group of people as the enemy. That's not the case. There are no enemies, except those that threaten your direct personal security and safety. And that can be complicated in today's society because that could be an entire military. So yes, today we have a little bit more to contend with than the philosophers of the past who could sit and ponder, what is the meaning of life? Today we've got bullets flying or people screaming about masks or screaming about this or that. There's always something going on in society. Or maybe your building's on fire from a fucking, some idiot throwing a Molotov. You just don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you kick a needle in the street. My friend's in California right now. I told him, make sure you don't wear your sandals. Might step in a pile of shit or kick a needle. Sounds absurd, but it's not. That's the reality of what we live in now. But I'm not passing judgment on the whole state or saying, oh, look at, these people are horrible, because I know the circumstances that brought us to this point where society is falling apart and where we can all watch it together. And meanwhile, we're trying to point the finger at other people instead of coming together. And that's the end game of nihilism. To eliminate what others have told us is true, and then to regain that community and connection with others and develop something we find important, something we think is valuable as individuals. And hopefully those things coincide with one another. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time. Peace out.